If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button as well as the bell to be notified of future videos. Thank you.
Hello Internet, we are back and I'm grateful to tell you we've got Gareth Rutherford with us again. Now it's a funny thing today because it's the 10th of June. By the time you people see it for 2 weeks later, but 10th of June 1980. That is an important day. I would like you all to make a note of this day because that is where the 6-1 Meg people and our forces, I suppose, attacked the Sparkle base, which were nicknamed Smoke Shell. That was Scapegoating. That is actually where Gareth got his Norris crooks from. We also had other people talking about that sad day. I think it was Marco. And I'll put the clip in here for us. And that was also a fantastic experience for me to listen to it. I was very humbled as I was when I was listening to Gareth. Now, Gareth, I must tell you, went for a jog just before we started recording here, somewhere up in the mountains. Obviously, the man didn't read what stands in the Bible, Proverbs 28 verse 1. And those of you who don't know what it says is in Afrikaans, slegs die goddelose sal hardloop sonder om gejaag te word. I recall saying that to a news corps counterinsurgency instructor once, and I was running with R1 above my head in front of his Land Cruiser being chased, so to speak. Only the wicked shall flee without being chased. But Gareth, you're most welcome here. I understand that after your military service, your national service, you did all your camps with the Cape Highlanders, which is a famous regiment there down in Cape Town. I have to ask you, and I'm sure I know what's the answer because you won't answer me, but let me ask you once again. What do you wear under that kilt thing?
Many I've heard, I've not seen, have actually don't wear anything because it's kind of a tradition. But I never took the risk. I never took the chance. I always wore a fairly thin jogger running shorts underneath. The Sergeant Major used to come around with his cane when we were all standing to attention there, and he'd sort of left, not so that you can see, but just so that he could figure whether you were wearing underpants or not. And it was more of a joke than anything else. And you're supposed to not wear anything, but I did.
Now I have to ask you, this regiment, it still exists?
I haven't been back, actually. As you know, and as we will mention today, I've been sidetracked quite badly out of life, or I don't know if you can call it badly, but I took a very interesting 10-year diversion. And during those 10 years, I never was able to really keep up with the regiment. And I've been meaning to get back to them, and I will. I'll go back and see if my uniform's still hanging up somewhere, though I'm sure some young guys have already used it, put it to good use. So yes, I'll go back and hopefully sign up again as a contributor, a proud contributor.
Well, I hope you do go back, and if you do go back, send us some pictures. And this brings me to another thing today.
Good idea.
I just want to tell everybody, we're trying something here on Legacy, and I'm asking you to participate in this. We found out through many people that if you are alone and you're being kept in seclusion at your house, and you don't join the associations, and you don't go to the parades, Satan will get you. I'm telling you, you're going to get very negative about things. You're going to get a depression. You're going to get angry. You're going to have all the negative energy there is. So I'm inviting all of you Go and join the parades, go and join your associations, and go and participate. Get back to your mates where you were happy once. Now, I'm also asking you, if you have these parades or these meetings of yours, co-workers, things like that, please take videos of it. Make your own videos, send it to me. I'll look at it. I will edit it for us. And after I get your permission, I intend broadcasting them. So more people we can reach, the bigger your friendships are with your mates, the less alone you will be. I mean, we're reaching the stage now where we are alone. Sometimes because of divorce, sometimes because of death. You don't need to be alone. Being alone is not a good thing. So come back to the fold, come and join us here. And now I need to speak to you, Gareth, about your time. You're an innocent man. As an attorney, I can tell you people, there's a lot of innocent people in jail. The system is not perfect. In fact, if you take the system in the US, you will find out that they don't have such things as trials anymore. Yes, you see them on TV, but that's because they're so rare. Something like 96% of them do plea bargains. Which means you would say to yourself, okay, well, they got me here. I'll rather take 5 years than take the risk of 20 years. That's not a fair system, by the way. That's rubbish. It's rubbish involved. It's also the only country in the world, as far as I know, where you can go to jail for lying to the secret police, which is called the FBI. Only country in the world. It is totally abnormal. It shouldn't even belong in a civilized country at all. But yet it is there. So, Gareth, I know that you spent some time in a Kuwaiti jail. I believe you're innocent. A lot of other people believe that as well. But you can tell us the story. And I'm sure we can learn from you, as we always do. Over to you, and thank you for coming back, breaking up your holiday here to speak to us. We are most grateful. Thank you. And to all of you who made such nice comments on Gareth's videos, thank you to all of you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Koos. Thank you for having me again. I'm glad to be back, here. And it's like you say, contributions and participation in this legacy series is a huge advantage to many of us who are stuck in our daily lives. Getting out here onto these legacy, what would we call them? Legacy series gives us each a chance to see what the others are doing and to participate in or take interest in each other. And I've had such a great series of views now, watching others just like me, sharing all this with you. There are various themes, and I would like to share with you today a theme of progress and stages of life, where each of us go from stage to stage as we progress and improve. And my previous series on legacy went over schooling, military service, and everything in between. And it was quite an interesting combination of events. But most interesting about it wasn't about me. There was such commonality with so many of you viewers. And today I hope it's much the same. I would like to go over to today. I would like to go over another phase from after my military phase into the stage where I used my military experiences and military training and military discipline in my work as an operations manager, a logistics specialist in the war-torn, then frontline warring state of Iraq. It was hectic, and it was exciting, and it was super dangerous. I'm shortening this very quickly, very much, because it's a long story and there's so much to tell and share. But I would like to get to the core issue that during this episode of great excitement and danger and lots of money and whatever, I was arrested one day with cannabis resin in my cargo, in a container in my cargo. It was well stashed into a tire. And how they do that, I don't know. They must have had a hell of a machine to do that. But it was my responsibility, and I signed for it. And I was fairly reckless in my actions, because I had no suspicion or fear or concerns that there was anything wrong. And I should have, looking back, hindsight is so clever, so sickeningly clever, that there were procedures which could have probably prevented this from happening. Security procedures, or more intensified X-rays, or more detailed attention to using the dogs, sniffer dogs and whatever in our cargoes before. But it was war, and I'd been doing this for 5 full years. And I mean, there was so much to be done. There was so much money to be made, and contracts that were coming into our company. I had no intention of delaying or slowing or causing any bottlenecks. And my efficiency and ability to move cargo anywhere, anything, anywhere, was second to none. And I'm really proud of it. Well, my company and me, not really me. I flew everywhere in helicopters under the British Ministry of Defence projects, and it was red carpet. It was fantastic. We were looking after the life support for the British military and supplying them with everything. I don't know if any of you know, but if I can just show you here a map of Iraq. Oh, it's upside down, sorry. But you can see Kuwait is a tiny little country down here in the point. Can you see that? It's a tiny little country down in the point at the bottom of Iraq. So, I used Kuwait, or our company used Kuwait as an office, a base for our logistics supplies, and everything came from the UK or from suppliers to Kuwait, and then we busted through. One of the big things was cement. And our company was hugely involved in cement supply for the construction and reconstruction of major facilities like water treatment and hospitals and bomb shelters and, buildings, everything that had been destroyed by the American incursions and the Iraqi incursions in Kuwait and in Iraq had to be rebuilt. And we were the guys that were doing it. So sorry to digress like this, but I felt you needed to have a lead up as to what I was doing there and how it was that I ended up being arrested. And I wrote some stuff down, and I don't need to write it down. It's just, it was just so ridiculous. I was on my way home. Every 3 months, I went home on a month's pass, which was to die for. Lovely. All the way to Cape Town from Basra or wherever I was working. And I was on my way because my turn came up. And as I had to move down from Basra, where I was based then in Iraq, I flew the night in a military aircraft with members of the British Embassy who'd come down from Baghdad. And together we flew from Iraq, Basra, to Kuwait, from where I would go to my office, see my boss, pay the money or give her all the documentation, and get my air ticket and catch a plane home. And I took with me my briefcase, my body armor, my helmet, what else? A lot of cash for the office, all accounted for, and a change of clothes because I was going home, and that's all I took. And I flew to Kuwait and got to my hotel, and from there I got a call from my Iraqi supervisors saying, "Hey, boss, please go and fetch this these tools. We've got some tools that need to be collected." I said, "No, I'm going to the office now. I've got to go and get my air ticket and I'm late." They said, "Boss, you have to go and collect our stuff. It's only going to take you an hour and we need the stuff now, and you didn't bring it with you when you were supposed to bring it with you on the airplane." And I said, as I always do, because I try to please too many people all the time, and you can never. I got in my van, my bakkie, and off I went, all the way out there. It was about 80 kilometers away, which is quite a long drive when you're late for your meeting with your boss. It's the weekend. It's the end of the week, and everybody wants to go home at 1 o'clock. And this was about 10, I think, 10 or 11 o'clock. And off I went. I went driving out 160 flat foot on this freeway out to near the border of Iraq. This was in Kuwait. And I went and I fetched a wheelbarrow and some tools and a tire and a whole lot of stuff that they needed. Supposedly critical equipment. I couldn't see, quite honestly, what was so important, but I went and collected it, and off I went back to the office. I had with me in the bakkie 2 cases of beer and a whole lot of whiskey and stuff for my bosses at work. This stuff is illegal in Kuwait, liquor, any kind of liquor. It's just one of their things. Every single judge, every single policeman, every single person of consequence has their liquor cabinet. And it's just something you've got to be discreet about. And that's all they really ask, you know. But strictly speaking, it was illegal. But for us as expats and as an invading force, or shall I say in Kuwait, we were the rescuing force. We had our liquor and we had our traditions, and we did not misuse it. This liquor was for the embassy, for the end of year party, and it was for my office and my colleagues. There was nothing illegal. Well, it was illegal, but there was nothing out of place with that. And if I had been caught with it, I think, quite honestly, as I was caught previously, before about 2 years before that, they give you a rap on the knuckles and make you sign something and then say, don't do that again, which is very good. Kuwait is great, and they have a great system, and they're good people. However, don't get caught on the wrong side. I phoned my wife. I told her, I'm on my way. I'll be on the plane on Saturday. This was Thursday afternoon. I got back to the city with my vital cargo, whatever it was, tire and tools in the bakkie. I'd fetched it for them. We were due to collect another 8.5 million rand per month cement contract. I could not say no, not for a quick little half an hour for a favor for these guys. I didn't know who they were. They were our contractors, cement dealers or cement brokers, and we were using a vast quantity of cement. The week before, we had 18 fully loaded 30-ton trucks, 18 times 30, fully loaded in a convoy, lined up to go into Iraq on one day. And the Kuwaiti said, nope, your papers aren't right. You haven't got permission to take all the Kuwaiti cement away. We need some for Kuwait, or something to that effect, or somebody wasn't getting his little cut on the deal. You know, there was a lot of that going on. It was wartime. It was crazy times. And we had 18 trucks stuck on the border. And this was my job. I was a major networker with both the Kuwaitis and British military and various authorizations required to do these kind of movements across border. I was very trusted. I was so fortunate to have so many friends in so many different departments of both the Kuwaiti and the British military reconstructive effort. And I'm proud of that, really, I was. And I'm mentioning this to you, not to brag, but it was my company's policy. And one of the reasons why I was with this company was because I was a good networker. I wish I'd known how to speak a bit more Arabic. It would have helped a lot. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I want to keep this fairly interesting. I got arrested. I arrived outside the Holiday Inn to the little workshop where I was supposed to unload these tires because they were special run flat tires, which can't be just repaired by anyone. You need special machinery to open these things and fix them. So for that reason, it had to go to this specific shop outside the Holiday Inn in Salmiya in Kuwait. And I stopped right there in broad daylight. It was about 1 o'clock, and now I was really late for my boss. I explained to him, I said, boss, I've got your Christmas cheer behind the seat in my bakkie. He said, don't, for goodness sake, bring it to the office. I will get it from you tonight, whatever, but well done, thank you, we'll see you later. I said, well, I need my air ticket, and we had a long chat and whatever. He said, when you get here, I'll be waiting. I'll wait for you at the office and whatever. He waited a long time. As I got to this place to drop off this tire, I unloaded the wheelbarrow and the tools because they had to go into the little workshop here. And I wanted to really get going. So I really chucked the stuff off. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw this whole, looked like a riot coming towards me. I looked behind me to see where they were going, but they were coming to me. It was the CID. They had been tracking me for apparently 3 months or whatever. my Iraqi supervisor, when I mentioned something, I'd been getting some funny phone calls. He said, Gareth, get rid of your phone chip. And in fact, throw that phone of yours away. I said, never. My phone is my life. It was just one of those new Nokias. It was one of those opening ones that time, 2008. And I wasn't going to throw it away. I was doing nothing illegal and I had nothing to hide from. I said, if they want to follow me or track me, they can. I do nothing wrong. They had been tracking me. They had been following me. And they had been ascertaining whether somebody had been moving drugs in our cargo for a long time. I wouldn't know, and I don't think so. But on this day was the only day that concerned me. They came for that tire, and sure enough, on the tire, there was a label. I didn't know what it was. I didn't care either. And they said, yeah, this is what we're looking for. And I didn't know what they were talking about. And I said, feel how heavy it is. And the tire was flippant. It was heavy. It felt like it was solid steel or something. I thought maybe it was full of whiskey or something exciting, interesting. But it was full of hashish. That's cannabis resin. It's like chocolate. It's like hard chocolate. And it comes in blocks. I sent you a photograph of when they laid it all out. Anyway, it was a super shock because these NCIS or CID drug guys are like rugby players. They're like special forces. And I think they're a bit disappointed that it was just me, because they'd been hoping to catch a whole drug trafficking syndicate. And it wasn't. It was just me unloading my tools in a tire at the workshop. Nevertheless, they put me into handcuffs and shackled my feet and patted me down and did the whole thing. They gave me a big sandwich package of money. It was wrapped in white paper. I wasn't sure what it was. I didn't know what it was, but it was supposed to be the exchange, the textbook case of the exchange for money. It never happened. There was no money involved. The only money involved was in my briefcase, and that was for my company and all accounted for. However, there I was being arrested, and they made it clear to me there that there was drugs in the tire. Of course, nobody could see anything. It was inside the tire, you can't see. And the hell knows how you open a tire. You've got to have machines or something to do that. Or a big, very sharp knife or chainsaw or something. Anyway, they didn't do that there. They bundled me into the back of the SUV, the big police vans, and they found all the beer behind the seat in my bakkie. It's a double cab bakkie, and it was in behind the back seat, and a whole lot of whiskey and vodka for their party. I've never taken any drugs. I don't smoke, and I drink very little. If I ever, I'll have a beer, maybe at a braai. So it was clearly not for me, but it was quite a lot. So they accused me of selling, of dealing in liquor, because it was a lot, you know. I said, no, it's for our company and for the embassy. And if you would like to see, all the paperwork is in my briefcase. Legitimate and accounted for. They said it's illegal. I said, fine, throw the book at me. And I shouldn't have said that. They threw the book and everything else at me. I didn't believe, honestly, that they would do this more than just give me a rap over the knuckles. Come on, please. I had such a good reputation. My company was implicitly perfectly honest. And this drugs find, there was no escape for me. There was no excuse. No excuse. There was no witnesses. There was nobody with me. It was me. I'd signed for it. I'd taken responsibility. I'd also taken on the risk of this bloody liquor. That's another story. Where I got it from, inside Kuwait. But everything and anything you could get in Kuwait if you knew the right people, and I did. I knew everybody, and not all bad people, some pretty dodgy characters, but mostly everything that we did was squeaky clean. You mentioned something to me earlier that the jail systems here are delinquent all over the world. It's not just Kuwait or South Africa. There are many good men in jail today. And, you know, nobody's perfect all the time. You or I or anyone could break the law for 1 minute on one day and end up in jail. And this is what's happened with a lot of the people that I saw in jail on one instance in their life. They were caught and ended up in jail. And this happened with me on one instance, on one day. I ended up being caught, but not just with one thing. I got caught up with the devil's triangle, which is what I called it. Liquor, illegal liquor, lots of it. Cash, lots of, oh, you can't see my black fingernail. Lots of cash for 3 different companies, all in separate envelopes with all the accounting details with each one. Everything was accounted for above board. There were issues, I know, with us moving more cash around than we should have, but there were no financial mechanisms like transfers at this stage. Everything that we did in Iraq was greenbacks, everything. Even when we were refueling ships in the harbor in southern Iraq, in Qasr port. And when you want to put a quarter tank of diesel into a ship, or let's be a bit more realistic, maybe half a tank, 50,000 liters of bunker oil, it's a huge bundle of cash. And that's what we were doing. We were buying cash fuel from the Iraqi terminal and from the Kuwaitis and using huge amounts of bundles of cash. And my job was so involved in carrying cash. And they needed somebody fairly, I don't want to say stupid or naive, but they needed somebody that didn't need to know everything, that could do the job. You know, we get told what we need to know, not as much as we'd like to know. And I was one of those. I didn't ask too much. And the cash we carried had to often go undeclared out of Kuwait because the commissions that we would have to pay on it would have to be, were huge. So if we could get the cash back to Dubai undeclared, it would mean less commissions. Anyway, it was wartime. It was such a complicated, difficult thing. And the point I'm making is everything wasn't squeaky clean, and least of all me. I've confessed my shortfalls and my errors and my stupidity and whatever you want to call it. There were shortcomings, but we were absolutely straight up down the line, as honest as a company could ever be during a war operation. But for Gareth, who just got arrested on the street in broad daylight with 49 kilograms of cannabis resin and no explanation, no excuses, it was me. It was with me. So much as I tried to deny everything, it just made me look stupid. It made me look, I just dug my hole deeper and deeper. They took me to the main police station and interrogated me as nicely as possible. It was scary at first because they had many little people, or I would say far lesser criminal activities, thieves and rogues from the city, and they would beat them. Little Indian and Asian fellas, they would beat them, and they would hear them squealing in the room next door. And they look at me like this, saying, "You're next." Well, they didn't say that, but that's what they wanted me to think. So they wanted me to spill the beans, and I did. I heard these guys squealing and squawking next door, and I spilled the beans as much as I could possibly do it to tell them, to let them know that whatever I know, whatever I've got, I'll give to you. All the information. Come to my hotel room, check my hotel. Ooh, I forgot. In my hotel room was another 2 boxes of whiskey. It wasn't the whiskey that we were talking about. And this was my honestly, I was as keen to catch these bloody drug traffickers as anybody. It was my job as such a highly trusted, regarded operator, logistics operator, to show them that there was nothing in the way of drugs or anything clandestine in my operation. My company was very honest. And I'm not saying that to please anyone. I haven't seen or heard from them in 10 or 15 years. I'm sure they're all fine doing business. But good for them. They were good to me afterwards as well. They looked after me as I was in jail. They paid my court fees from my salary, actually. I had nothing left. Everything, the balance went to equal. They even took the vehicle that was confiscated, that I was driving, the company vehicle. They put that onto my account. They made me pay $7,000 for it, which I thought was a bit mean. But at the end of the day, I didn't need anything. I was in jail, and I'd been given a 25-year life sentence. I wasn't going to come out anytime soon, and everybody would have been long gone. So my balance with the company that I worked for was clean. I think they also all knew that the allegations against me were not just stupid and ridiculous, they were impossible. I had flown the night before, and they knew it. My name was on the manifest. I did not drive over the border with tools and tires full of drugs or whatever, which is what the allegations were, that I'd driven across the border with all this liquor, probably a lot more liquor than that, and a whole lot of tires with drugs in. As it happened, there were 4 or 5 tires. 4 went to Saudi, across the Kuwait border, came in the harbor, went to Saudi, as mine was being used as a diversion. My little tire, hopefully it wouldn't get arrested or wouldn't get caught, but if it did, it would have been a small sacrifice, because that meant the other 4 tires full of goodness knows what, probably cocaine or something, or heroin, something much more expensive, went to Saudi, and then onwards to Dubai. This is what I learned later, 4 years later. We knew nothing of this or the other political motives behind my implication here. So at no time did I plead innocence, but at the same time, I was able to explain everything that I had with me and everything that I did. It didn't help. They knew before they arrested me, I was arrested. They knew everything. They knew that I wasn't implicated or involved, or they planned this thing meticulously. It was a masterful manipulation. And they needed somebody just like me who was reliable and who they knew they could track. They had my phone. They knew exactly when I was doing this. They followed my patterns. No matter what I did to cover my patterns, they were one up on us. But as I said to you, I had nothing to hide. So for that reason, I didn't realize that these underworld organizations were all linked. They had relations with the CIDs and the drug squad. They speak to all the mafia. They know what's going on. They know who's doing what. And it is a good system. It's for the benefit of of controlling the amount of contraband, whatever it is that comes and goes into their very well-run little country, and I compliment them for this. But implicating me was a really shit scene. It was really a horrible thing to do. And regardless of my guilt or innocence, I had that book thrown at me completely. They threw everything at me, and not just for me. They wanted a political points. They wanted political points here, and they got them. Our entire British Ministry of Defence project was in complete disarray and jeopardy because of this. It was so embarrassing. And this is the other point that I mentioned. The repercussions, all the way from the guys that I worked with on the ground, I'm sure they knew that I was not implicated in this stuff. What's the word? That I was not intentionally participating in drug trafficking. I'd been very cleverly implicated. So I admitted my shortfalls there as not being, as being too arrogant or feeling that that nobody's going to stop me and check me out. They all knew me, and they knew that I wouldn't do this. But this happening was such a great embarrassment. It was an embarrassment all the way up to our embassy. I'm sure it went to Tony Blair, who was the Prime Minister at the time. They tried sidestepping it and saying, no, he's civilian. And they tried that one. He said, well, please give them a list of the manifest to prove that I flew. That would mean that their whole case against me would fall flat. And they said, no, it was civilian stuff, and you are civilian, and we have nothing to do with it. So they tried to distance themselves. Understandably, what point would it have been? It couldn't have saved them anything. So let me just turn the phone off. Don't want any calls. It couldn't have you know, if they tried to save me, somebody had to take the fall for this. And it was either my company and the entire structure of operatives around me, or it was me. So I can understand that for this purpose, I was a scapegoat. And even though at the time I didn't want to be, and I didn't realize it like we do now, it had to be me. And in a way, it was a kind of a good thing that it was me, because I fitted in well with it. You know, my military training, boarding school, and all this stuff. I even went as far as to say, army was harder than jail. In those days in army, we didn't have phones. We had very little communication. We were far away from home, and we had to run for our food. Yeah, you didn't have to run for your food. It came to you. That was a bad example, but it's just one of many. Why in a good jail system, like I say, Kuwait, they've got money. They've got a fairly well-organized system of grading. And if you cooperate and participate and show good behavior, you get privileges. I, of course, had British Embassy covering me because they had much higher influence. South African Embassy were excellent. They also were very concerned for me, and they went to the British Embassy and cooperated with them and said, look, we'll take the second. We'll go and visit him as well, but you take the main load because he's working for Ministry of Defense and he's got a British passport or something. So I was under the great protection of the British Embassy, which made a huge difference. I was one white guy in a sea of other. There was no other. Maybe a couple of Russians, I think, a couple of Russian types there. But there was really only me, and I stuck out like a bit of a sore thumb. I was mostly taller than most of them. And it was quite bewildering to be thrown into this maelstrom of others, criminals. But as I was soon to find out, some wonderful people, you know, that was just on the wrong side of the road, doing the wrong thing on a day somewhere once in their life. So I came across all types in there. I think it's the same in any jail. And they like to exaggerate and tell you how terrible it is. And I could do that. But we are not going to be a sad sack here. I never was a sad sack. And I would like to express how wide this experience spread beyond me into my family, for example. Imagine my wife and child at the airport waiting for me, like my boss, Mike Wallbanks, a wonderful guy. He waited for me for the whole day on that weekend. Where's that bloody Gareth? He said he'd be here in half an hour. I want my bloody Christmas box. And I just didn't pitch up. Nobody knew where I was. I was, of course, being bundled upside down and thrown, hooked up onto the door in the CID chief's office with my handcuffs over the door, made to look like a real football. They were just trying to scare me, and they did. But they were actually, all of them, the CIDs, they were good guys too, amongst them. And I think they saw, some of them knew what was going on, that I was only the scapegoat, and they had to play along. Just like the doctors with our COVID issue, they have to play along. If they contest it or say something logical or sensible, they get thrown out the medical board. It's the same here. These guys had to toe the line with this problem. It was far bigger than me. It was a deliberately calculated strategy to control the flow of drugs. I wouldn't say to stop them, because the flow of drugs through Kuwait is a huge business and it's connected to the underworld globally. I don't know much about it, but I did find out a lot about it in the jail. Once again, I didn't want to ask, but because it was involved myself, I had to. And it was a huge network of global, mega wealthy traffickers in all commodities. And they do this. They implicate people. I suppose you get people that are mules, which are carriers of drugs, who get money. They get paid to do this, and they do this bloody stuff. They are vermin, and they are criminals. So I separated myself there, and I said, you know, I did nothing willingly or knowingly here. There was no payment involved. And for that reason, my irregular actions should not have been punished by jailing. They should have wrapped me on the knuckles, and my embassy should have got me out. And I kept hoping that would happen, because it was just ridiculous what they were doing. It was just crazy. But not everybody knew me. And of course they had to. There was, if the embassy interfered, I would be, I wasn't important enough to damage their relationship. You know, the relationship was sensitive at the time, and the consular officer told me, he said, Gareth, we'd like to represent you and interfere on your behalf, but the political situations are too sensitive at the moment, and we cannot put our relationship on the line for something that the courts have condemned you for. Whatever I said, whatever happened in that court, whatever my lawyer, whatever the lawyer had tried or pretended to say, it didn't matter. I had been convicted before I was arrested. I'd been convicted long ago, and regardless of my guilt or innocence, I was going to be that one that was to take the fall for this infraction. That's not the whole story. On the day that I went into that jail, 3 drug traffickers who'd given my name as their supplier, they were all working in the cement business, by the way, 3 of them left that jail on the same day on a plea bargain. Each of them had paid 120,000 dinars. That's times $3.50 each. That's a huge amount of money. It was nothing. These guys, the money is not, it doesn't, you don't ask how much, they just say when and where. And there was me on the other side. And there's just no comparison, you know. So these 3 went, there were supposed to be 4, and the 4th one that was supposed to go had his lip on the ground for years. He was stuck in the jail, and he was the guy that actually told me stuff, let me know about this business and that he'd been left behind. I met him at the school. I haven't told you, but I participated in the Islamic school, the madrasa, and it was great. I had wonderful teachers. It was extremist. It was super orthodox religious, I wouldn't say brainwashing, but conditioning. And I don't say it badly here, because these criminals, many of them coming in there, for them it was a very good alternative to the lives of crime and ignorance that they'd had out of jail. So they came in here, most of them Arabs that couldn't even read or write. And they'd done something bad on a day, or been part of the drugs train and been thrown into jail. And for them, it was a great thing, because they were given the opportunity to go to school and learn the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and to do basic reading and writing, which is what I did. I ended up in the school in this extremist hotbed of Islamic, I wouldn't say ISIS or Daesh followers, but there were lots of them in there. And if that made it even more interesting, because I didn't know it or realize it at first. But as the years and the time went by, I figured out really what was going on there. And I have to say, it was a lot more good than anything derogatory that we've been told or fed. I was in a position to see things that I would never, in the course of my normal life, have ever seen, even in the best movies or the most detailed documentaries. I would never have the chance to have seen and experienced, participated, and contributed to such a culture and an education. I didn't quite assimilate. I tried. I did all that bowing and scraping and the full-on religious stuff. I learned all the Arabic Quranic texts, verses, all the most important ones. I think I could still say a few now to you, but I'm not going to. And I appreciated them for the hope and for the faith and for the direction that it gave these many lost individuals. So out of this jail experience came such a lot of good. Of course, days were not always nice. There were things that happened there that were so scary that, like in any jail, and you'll see it in the movies, when the wardens go on a raid, we had this, when these special forces with their helmets and batons and shock sticks and black body armor, all padded up with gloves. You can't see their faces. They've got black balaclavas on, and they come in there and they hit you. Well, I didn't get hit, but I was lucky enough to dodge. Mostly the guys in front of me and behind me got hit, and those that were just a little bit too slow. And they come into your block shouting and screaming, and they get you all out of your little nests, because everybody's in their little nests in these cells. We make our little nest. We are like little birds, you know, as human beings. You go into any prison and you'll see they've all got their little nests, their little personal areas. And the longer you stay there, the more detailed your little nest gets. It collects little trinkets and gadgets. I would have loved to have shown you some of the photographs which I had of my cell, and sure enough, on the walls, all these little trinkets and gadgets and photos of my son and my wife, and better times, my mom and the dogs, and little personal things in your little personal areas. I mention this because when these special forces come tearing into your cell, they come for contraband, they come looking for drugs, they come looking for telephones, knives, and hell knows else. You won't believe what these prisoners collect in their little nests. I was one of them. And it happened. Yes, it happened so often. I think, though, that my status as a British, they called me the British. My status had a certain amount of protection, both the British and Americans, but more me. For reasons I don't know, possibly I'll explain that later. In comes the special forces. They kick you out and they make you sit in lines like this in the yard outside the block. And then they go into your little nests and they pull out everything. They turn the beds upside. They take the mattresses out because they've stuck stuff into the mattresses. They pull the air conditioners off the walls. They destroy. It's absolute mayhem. And they put everything into a big pile in the middle of the room. Even the TVs, there were TVs in there. And they bought some Indian Belladea, what do they call them? They're like cleaners. They earn money, they do this cleaning project work, but they came in with trolleys and they put all these TVs on top of each other because they had to go through the X-ray machine. You know, at the airport, they've got an X-ray machine, same. Everything goes through the X-ray machine and they can see what you've hidden inside your TV, because they do. They hide all sorts of stuff, drugs and contraband, and they check out through the TV without having to open them. And they have dogs there and they sniff them out. And so it's quite a big operation. And I spoke to a couple of these special forces guys who later became my friends, actually. Dark angels. These were amazing people. I had a couple of them actually, who I think knew my case. And, you know, initially, it took a while. They would tear my cell apart. But as the years went by and they kind of got to know us, and we kind of got to know them, which is why they do change their routine, their routes, and where they do their raids. They do change them around. But as it happened, I got to know a few of them, even behind these balaclavas. I got to recognize the voices. I was out in the yard because the guys were tearing up the rooms, our little nests inside. I was sitting there in the yard on our haunches, shivering, actually. I was shivering. I don't know why I was shivering. Maybe it was a bit chilly, but it was nerve-wracking. It was quite scary. And we're nose to tail in lines, maybe 50, 50, 50, 50, and there's 200 in the block. And I was shivering. I don't know why. I'm sure a lot of them were shivering, especially the ones that had been whacked with that bloody baton. And a few of them were, you could hear it. And this voice came from my left shoulder. He said, British, why are you shivering? What's the matter? Are you cold? Do you want to go fetch your jacket? And there, standing above me, is my friend. Big. He's a monster. He does weights. They do, all of them. They do this gym training and they get big and strong. They have to be to do this job. Ace, his name was Ace. Maybe I shouldn't give any names, but I give him credit for being such an even, balanced, gentle, kind, good initiative, excellent policeman. He did his job right. But he said, hey, come and go and sit on the air conditioner at the back there. So he hooked me out and he put me at the back there where we could talk. And he said, don't worry, we won't do your room. We won't do your room. And it was such a relief. And sure enough, when I got in there, my room was fine. Everyone else's room was upside down, but there were a few rooms, a couple of them, that they'd actually left off the hook. And he said, don't worry, we are not doing your room today. We're tired. And I said, yeah, it's probably shit. It was full summer. It was hot. And they're in this black body armor and everything. It was a terrible job. And opening up those nests with all the cockroaches running out and dust mites. And it's a filthy business. And I'm not exaggerating. It's a disgusting business. And really, I learned this from a few of them, that actually tearing their rooms apart like this was awful. But they had to do it, and it gets done in every jail, wherever you are, because the human nature is to make little collections of all sorts of things and all sorts of illegal things. They did catch my phone. You know, after about 4 years, I managed to get a phone, which was a lifesaver. Before I got a phone, there was a phone in the block which we could hire, which was fine, which meant that we still had some communication. And I had some friends with quite powerful guys in the block who actually had their own phones, and my mum had their number. So I'd get SMSs from her, from my friends, which was something which takes time. And the point I'm making here is, with time, a little bit of effort, good attitude, you can progress in any location, no matter how bad it is. If it's in Auschwitz or some awful prison camp in Cambodia or Zimbabwe, every one of them has its levels of privilege. And these levels take influence, I suppose, your embassy and your background, your culture, your education, and your effort. And there were two options. The one option was to be hard-assed and deny and refuse and sit in your nest and cogitate and get your food and get your sentence over with, or the other was to participate. And I felt, after speaking to my wise old mum, well, that's another story. I was so depressed and down with this 25-year sentence over my head. At one stage, at many stages, I wanted to off. I said, there's no point in me staying. I wanted to do something simple, not difficult. And it was with good reason, because by the time I was 74, with no money and no wife, no mother and father, no house, nothing, no career left. I'm out here, I'm sitting in jail in my most important earning years of my life. And here I come and sit in jail, and I lose everything I've ever worked for. I lost it all. My mom died, my youngest brother died, I lost it all. And it was a huge shock then, and gave me good reason to say, well, Mom, I'm not staying. I'm not going to stay to be their toy, to play with me for 25 years. And she said, Gareth, you will not do that. You would never do that. Every day there's hope, and whatever's going to happen, you're going to get out of there. So just stop this bullshit, get your mind right, and make the best of it. Said, make the best of what? She said, you just find it. You'll find it, and you'll do it. You do it. It was an instruction. And she was right. I took a very sharp turn from there. There were great things that happened. Embassy came in frequently, both embassies actually. And my dad, my brother and my dad visited 3 times. What else? I had friends that would come there every second week. Friends working in Kuwait who knew my case was delinquent, and regardless of my guilt or innocence, they loved me. And they came and visited me. It was a hell of a rigmarole to get in there. My one dear friend, we're living and working in London, Shireen, a beautiful lady from my hometown when we were kids. And she found that I was in jail. We spoke a lot on WhatsApp, and then the next thing, she booked herself on a round trip on the weekend, and she came in. She came all the way from London into the embassy at Kuwait, came to visit me in the jail. And on the day that she came to visit me in the jail, there was a lockdown. There had been an escape attempt. The whole jail was locked down, and here she was in the car park outside. And the General Ibrahim, the boss of the jail, was walking across the car park, and she'd actually spoken to him somewhere along the line, I don't know, or my dad had spoken to him on one of his visits. And she ran over to General Ibrahim and she said, "Please, I've come all the way from London. I just wanted to see Gareth." She said, "No, the special forces are in this jail. They've taken control. Everything's closed and nobody comes or goes. Even if they die, they can rot there, but no one's going in." And she burst out crying. And there was this beautiful lady in high heels and beautifully outfitted. She'd gone to the nines, dressed to the nines, and just to see me. And she'd had authorization from embassy and permissions to come and visit, and everything had been done. And she got to the front door, which was a series of steel doors like you see in any maximum security prison. Yes. The general turned around, picked up his phone, made a call, and the doors opened. Every one of those doors in that jail was closed that day, and nothing, and nobody moved between any compartment anywhere. But those doors opened for her. They let her into the admin block, and on my side, though it took an hour and a half, they called me, because it took an hour and a half for this guy to walk 50 meters, maybe a bit more than that, 100 meters through gates that had all been very tightly locked. And this was a miracle. It was just absolutely impossible that this young, beautiful woman came trotting through the strictest, highest security prison in her high heels. And they put us together in a tiny little back room. There was a supervisor there. I was a bit shell-shocked because I didn't expect anything to move there, but I was blessed. It was another miracle, and more than just seeing her. This was evidence of the great influence that we had generated by our behavior. My dad and my brother visiting, the embassy's frequent inquiries, the massive amount of post coming in to government departments, whichever way it went, I wasn't just swept under that carpet. I was of consequence. I was somebody that had love. lots of love. I was somebody that had the most amazing range and quiver of friends across the world, all participating in most vigorous petitions. I'm absolutely eternally grateful to those people that actually took the trouble to go through all the steps in these petitions, to have signed, and not just signed their names, but to have actually made a comment. Comments like, this guy has been in here long enough. Stop playing with us now. Get him free, or let him out. Gareth, free Gareth, or whatever. But we had thousands and thousands of people that I didn't even know that were participating in these petitions. And then the newspaper got wind of these petitions. I say these petitions, it was one really that was most significant. And that was actually started by a few of my friends, David Lotter, who you probably know, and Tom Mason. Well, I'm not going to go into names. There were so many people that were involved, but they got this petition going. The newspaper published it, and a photograph of me, actually, which was quite dangerous because it was one of the photos I'd put on the internet. And if the jail had seen that photo, they would have known that I'd taken it with an illegal camera or illegal phone. So it was a bit of a tense moment there, but they didn't do anything. Interesting to that, I was on a visit. I think my brother and a friend, Nick and Tammy, came to visit me, and we were in a visiting room. And the entourage, the general and his colonels and all the high-ranking officers had been doing an inspection of the prison, as they do. You won't believe the rank. And they stopped and they said, "Oh, Gareth, how are you doing?" You say, "Do you need anything?" or whatever. And these high ranks were so great. And I said, "Yes, General, have you seen I'm front page news again." And I'd cut out the newspaper article with my photograph on it, saying, with a petition, saying that there's nearly 5,000 signatures on this petition. And I showed it to him. It was stuck in my journal. And he opened the journal and he looked at it with all his men on either side who were Arabic. They probably didn't understand much English. And he looked at me and he said, "Gareth, this is very good." And he closed the book and he gave it back to me, and off he went. Now you tell me, what does that mean? That the boss of the jail knows, and they knew everything. They knew my case was a bullshit. They knew that everything had to be have political motives behind it. And they had seen and been with me, met my family, spoken to the embassy. They had underworld mafia connections inside the jail. They knew the whole thing from top to bottom. The judiciary didn't. The lawyers had no idea. And the law and the policemen had no idea, no matter how much they may have participated in planning this thing. The jail boss knew everything. And for this reason, they were better to me. They put me onto a different level now. They gave me my own room, which was a huge step up. They just renovated a block, and the Colonel Abdul Aziz, a really nice guy, Colonel Majid, said, "Gareth, you must get out of this block," because I was in a block with political prisoners, because your case is drugs, and they don't want drug cases with the political prisoners. But we're going to put you in your own new block, and you can stay in this room, and you stay in that room, and no one goes in there with you. I said, "Thank you, Colonel." And off I went. And from then on, I think it was the last 4 years, I had my own room, which is such a privilege. People were so envious and so jealous, and they complained high and low, saying, why is the British? He's not even Kuwaiti. Why has he got his own room and we haven't? And there were many reasons, and most of them I'm proud of. And it was evidence that what my mom had said, you hang in there, you make this work, you do the best you can, contribute, don't detract from the efforts, don't criticize and condemn. She said, most of all, keep your sense of humor, whatever that meant. And then she died. So she left me with some good stuff. And I think I made the best out of this jail. I left 10 years later, which was 15 years before my sentence ended, because they needed to get rid of me. This petition business was causing huge embarrassment. It was clear that my case was full of holes. And they couldn't acknowledge that they were wrong. So on the Amir's birthday, I was given reprieve. And they managed to shuttle me out the country. Let me tell you, it was great. I met the generals on the way out. I offered him, I said, you want my clarinet? You want to keep? I gave him a picture. I had a nice little picture that my brother had bought from Cape Town, one of those beautiful beaches. It was a little plaque that I kept in my cell, and I gave that to him. He said, no, you keep the clarinet. You're going to need that. I was the only prisoner in that jail that was allowed to play any instrument. And he said to me, any instrument you want, you can tell me what you want. I said, it's fine. This is all I really wanted. And I so loved playing that thing. It was my savior, that clarinet. Terrible music. I put some clips on Facebook, quite a lot actually. And it was hard for me to do that because I'm a terrible musician. No matter how hard I tried, I've been playing for 40 years. I'm still terrible, terrible. But I love it. And I do it because I love it. And I was in my own cell where I could close the door and they couldn't hear too much of it. Some of them tried to make me feel okay and said, yeah, no, we hear, it sounds nice. But if you know what Arabic music sounds like to our ears, it's terrible. I could never. I've tried and I've listened to the Arabic music, the way they have these half notes or quarter notes. And it just doesn't go. Anyway, I said goodbye to the general, and he was so gentle and kind to the last day. I'm most grateful to him for his care of my father, who was about 85 when he first came in there. He assured my dad, he said, Mr. Rutherford, don't ever fear. I've got your boy. Don't ever fear. I'm looking after him. And that for me was a huge relief because the pain and the agony of this jail was not for me. I've been through much worse in our military, promise you. The pain was my son, Michael. The 9-year-old kid I left behind, who never saw me again for 10 full years. He never had a dad clapping at the sidelines when he was playing rugby or water polo. He never had a grandfather, my dad, who loved him, or his grandmother, who would have loved to have seen him. He never saw. He never got any of those things. He grew up alone. with his mum, who was very brave. I have to give them this applause and accolade, because from the second that they'd learned that I wasn't coming home, it was one thing. But from the second that I had been convicted 4 months later, it was a huge embarrassment. You know, the grapevine at school, all the kids talking. Michael's dad's in jail. He had to live, this 9-10-year-old kid had to live with us in junior school all the way through high school. People ask, well, where's your dad? Oh, you the guy with your dad in jail? Or, I don't know. It was, I know it was unbearably awful, embarrassing, shameful for them, regardless of my guilt or innocence, the fact that I was still in jail and that his dad was in jail. And my heart broke for them. Year after year, I realized the agony that they had to endure. And my wife never forgave me. It was her bitterness and her anger and her shame. And she never, ever recovered. Even today, I asked her on a very, very rare occasion, when I did get back, I went to see her. And I said, are you angry? And she said, no. Her mouth down like a, no. But I understand her shock and her sadness and her disappointment that I had destroyed her life. She did beautifully. She did well. She brought up the kid fantastically. As much as I could give her from our combined assets, I gave her everything, because I knew she would do with that the right stuff, the right thing for the kid. And she did everything. She sold the huge house that we had on the mountain. My life's work with everything in it. And she bought a sensible house in a different area. And it was the right thing to do. And she sent him to a good school nearby. And she did everything right. He was A+, distinctions all the way. He played saxophone 1,000 times better than me. And went to university, got his degree, and all because of my wife. She did that. My ex-wife, she divorced me shortly before my mom died. Quite rightly so, because we agreed she needed to get on with her life, and I still at that time had 25 years hanging over my head. So fair enough, she felt that she should cut ties with me and move on. So I gave her that I signed the divorce paper with my blessing, and gave her everything I could, my pension, everything. I said, more will come. I'll get sorted out. As it happened, my mom died and left me some money, so it was fine. And it all turned out good in the end. I had a huge party when I arrived back in London. I told you I went and said goodbye to the general at the jail, and then he put 2 guys on to escort me to the airport because I was being deported, which is a very embarrassing thing to do, because they normally deport you in chains. And you go walking through the airport in chains, straight to the back door, and they flush you down the toilet, straight into the airplane. And my 2 guards took me. We went to Debenhams to go and get new jeans. It's like Woolworths. And I took off my prison fatigues. Said, no, don't worry about the cuffs. They took the cuffs off. And they helped me choose some pants and a nice shirt. And I wanted to take my prison jacket and my fatigues with me. They said, no, you leave that junk there for the dustbin. You are now on a new thing. We bought ice cream in the airport. They bought ice cream for me. And we strolled through the airport. They booked me in. And I was in amongst all these people. They weren't prisoners. I suppose they were prisoners in a different way, but it was the first time, other than once in the hospital. I went to the mental hospital. Oh, that's another story. I'll leave that out today. But they put me in a mental hospital for 3 weeks as well. So that was another exciting, interesting, pretty cuck experience as well, but wonderful stuff to endure, to experience. You know, the worst experiences give us the best growth. And that's what happened every time. And when you do, after all these bad, gory, awful, difficult situations, when you do finally get your ice cream and change your clothes, look around you, you look around with a different light in your eyes. And that's what happened. And I got into that play. I got into the waiting area. This was important to me. And they were like escorting me. They gave the ticket. I went to the front of the queue. They just walked because they were police. And they kind of didn't like look at me or anything. And I sidled in behind them. And I just right to the front of the queue every time. VIP. And they pointed to me behind the glass wall. They said, go and sit over there, which is in the waiting room for departures. And I went and I sat there. And I looked behind me and they were gone. The next thing I saw was everybody was like this. I've never seen this. I had a phone, but I didn't know. Everybody was like this. Of course, they were doing their e-tickets, you know, for the gate passes. I had my paper ticket. It was fine. I didn't need an e-ticket. But there was new stuff happening everywhere. Everything had changed. The cars were better. Everything was, 10 years had gone by. And this was my first shocking exposure to being back. I got on an airplane like a normal person. And I say in my book that I wrote, if any of them had any idea where I'd just come from, they wouldn't believe it. Flew into London. It was wonderful. There were people waiting for me from the Veterans Association. One guy had even come in from Switzerland. He'd come into Heathrow at 7 o'clock in the morning. I don't know how he managed to get there. But they made these sacrifices to express their solidarity. And I could never have expected it or been able to thank them enough. They were there waiting, and I've got photographs of them, of that day. And my dear friends, Tom and Ellen Mason in Kent, actually came to fetch me, to take me to their house, where I stayed for almost a month because I had to get my bank account sorted, passport, registered with National Health Insurance. I went to the job center and I went to the embassy to go and thank those wonderful people in London who'd been doing all my cash transfers and who'd become involved in my story. I'd written them letters, we'd communicated, we'd become friends, and the network was enormous. So I had a lot to do before I got home to Cape Town. And Tom and Ellen helped me do all those things. It was great to get back to civilian life. I had my first swim in 10 years. You know, there was hardly a day that I would ever not swim. I hadn't driven a car for 10 years. Got a photo of me actually just halfway. I think I sent it to you. My first swim. It was much more than a swim. It was a baptism, a complete baptism. And there was many, many days like that. As I say, my eyes were completely different. I saw the world completely different. It was wonderful every single day. The generosity and the care, the love that I had absorbed, that had sustained me, that had saved my life. I promise you, these friends, they saved my life. I could never thank them enough. This one guy, Michael Dury, I think he sent me a lump sum of $1,200 to the embassy, just to buy a new phone. That's how much they cost. A shitty little secondhand phone. I actually don't have it here, but small Galaxy Pocket. $1,000 inside the jail. But that's the kind of generosity and kindness. People would send me $100 at a time. One, Shireen from one side, Michael from another. Just the most amazing people, friends that had known me, grown up with me, and who had come into this adventure and this amazing experience of sadness, hardship, trauma, success, and then victory. And we knew it would come out well, better at the end. We're still waiting for all of us who've been watching or participating or caring are waiting for my son to finally come in onto the scene. Unfortunately, my dad died recently, so he missed his grandpa, which is sad. But he's taken a long time to get over this and the shame and the entire episode that affected his life. For whatever reasons, I don't know what they are. We feel sorry for him. But I think it'll all work out in the end. And we have to be patient. So out of all these bad, difficult situations, there comes a lot of good. And this jail episode, much as it was embarrassing and awful and traumatic, it was an incredible journey. And the best, or one of the best things about it was that I was able to share it. Not because I needed to spread the load, but because it was such a human tragedy. It was way beyond me, much more than my story. And the care that came in was for me and Michael, my boy, and my wife, my mom, who was so shattered by this thing. She actually transcribed all the journals. That's another story. I wrote everything down, occurrences for the day. It's quite boring stuff because, 10 years of jail. Woke up in the morning, brushed my teeth. You can't. So it has to be fairly carefully compiled. And I've done that, I think, as best as I can. I'm finishing my final edit now. I have with me here at least 20 pages of account that I'd anticipated that I would or could have fallen back on to share with you, but I think we've shared enough now. That's inside the jail yard. If you look at the roof, there's a steel lattice roof. I had so many pictures of being caged. And I look at us today, in many ways with the COVID and whatever, we're much worse caged than I was ever caged in that jail. So I wrote all about the Devil's Triangle. I'm looking here for something I would like to share with you because it's something to round off nicely here out of all this 20 pages, 22 pages of stuff that I was hoping to share with you. Let me just read what I've given you, some of it. I attended a religious school there. It is the most insidious brainwashing mechanism put in place to orientate the evilest criminals in the country. I was compelled to participate for obvious reasons, and they loved having me there. For many of the poor criminals here, it's a very good thing, as for the first time in their criminal lives, they get sight of some decent social values and some reasonable self-discipline. No more spitting or peeing in the corner or killing or beating wives, no more raping, and a chance to learn to read and write. You know, it was such a huge change for them, just like me, all of us getting thrown into this jail. I've been over all of this. I learned other things, more, better. I didn't fight the stream. I swam obliquely across the stream and compromised. I learned how to grab a hold of the riverbank. But no matter how hard I tried, living with them into their culture, I'll never be one of them. And I tried. There's so much here. I would like to go on more, but I think I want to keep this a little shorter. I think this jail project is something that I can't find it now. Something we can talk about next time. Unless you feel to give me any more time. Let's keep this one short for the reasons that we discussed.
Well, I can tell you, I've been sitting here thinking to myself, this is fantastic to hear this. And man, there's going to be a lot of people with their eyes more open now. I know that we tend to judge too quickly. This is what we do as human beings. You know, you see a guy in prison uniform and you immediately think of worst. But again, I tell you, I've seen it. That's why I'm personally against the death penalty. I've seen in my class, when I studied law, there were 444 of us that started. 5 years later, when we got LLB, it was first B, Juris B, Prof, LLB, whatever you did, there were about 48 of us left. Of that 48, I think half qualified as attorneys or as advocates. In other words, passing actually the bar exams. And
Yes.
only 3 are left in the private practice, and they were the stupid ones of the class. So I know how imperfect we are. Now speaking now as lawyers and the legal system, which is why I'm against the death penalty, because I don't trust these people to make the right decision. You know, you think once you're caught into a system, it's really bad. And there are a lot of South Africans and other people who are trapped in this very same situation. And until you've been there and you've heard a story like yours, Gareth, you cannot understand the nightmare of such a situation. It is just horrible. And I've been
Yes.
listening to you, and I must say your positive outlook on this is just fantastic, and I think everyone will agree to it. I don't even have questions,
No,
because
good.
whatever questions I put here will not do justice to what you were saying. But I have one of them, and I have to ask: have you ever thought of escaping physically out of the prison and make your way south?
Yes. There was a couple of times, but the best time was once coming back from court. We come in a bus, and the bus stops outside the main gate, and then we come through the building, and we have to get searched and whatever. And when we got out of that bus, I looked over to the side. The policeman escorting had gone inside, and there was a cabin. There were two cabins in a line about 20 meters away with a gap underneath. And if ever there was a time for me to make a run for it, it was the right time. But I didn't. Because in Kuwait, there's another story. Once you escape, it's a tiny country, and I showed you that map with proper borders, fences, patrolled every minute. Once you escape from that bus into this public streets, if you got that far, where do you go? It's a police state. There is no place to run. Would I go to my office? Would I go to my hotel? Would I go to my friends? There is no place for me to go unless I laid down and maybe stayed underground for a month. There's no escape. And I looked at the video, last night about the escape from Pretoria Central Prison in 1967 or something. And they escaped making keys. It's impossible. You can't make keys. The cameras are everywhere. It's just like in America now. You can't move, do a thing, even outside the building. If you get out, they'll see you. I wish we had it here in South Africa. We could probably save a lot of misery, but we wouldn't have the manpower to man it. They have the manpower. They have such a well-organized, well-ordered, and well-funded system of security in Kuwait. And I've always said Kuwait was great. I don't think I'll ever go back there. I don't need to. But if ever I had to, I would love it. I'd love it. No escape for us. That was a very, well, can I just elaborate? Some guys actually dug a tunnel. There was a guy, Abu Ahmed, a guy in my cell, very wealthy, well-to-do drug criminal, drug dealer. And he had dug a tunnel. He had 4 guys working for him in his cell. They had about a half a square meter tiny hole cut into the concrete floor. And they went down and along 16 meters underneath a wall, close, their cell was right against the outer wall. And somebody found it at the last minute. They found the tunnel. And he got another further 15 years in jail. But because he was so well connected, they gave him off 15 years. But there was an escape attempt about 6 years or 7 years before I got there. And since then, they built another wall. But a monster, like 8 or 10 meters high up there with all stuff on the top, sensors on the top, and it goes down 6 meters into the ground to the bedrock. So it's impossible to tunnel. But interesting stuff. There have been attempts made previously, but today you'd have to have a very fast helicopter to lift you off the sports ground or something like that. But where to?
Yeah, and of course you stick out. I mean, as a Westerner there, and you're taller.
Absolutely.
You really are less, and most people don't think that far. You know, that's the problem.
The other thing is, I was always hoping to get released the next day. I was waiting for that call. You know, every day there was more than hope. Oh, some days I got dejected and depressed and negative on it. But generally, I felt that the penny must drop. Sometime, somewhere, somehow, my freedom's coming. And it did, 10 years too late. But that was a hell of a lot better than 25. And the other thing I had to say was that I didn't lose anything. I exchanged. I exchanged one life for another. And much of what I lost in assets and wealth, I gained in other ways. And I would never do it again. But my machines, my laptop's on my lap. I would never do it again, but I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for having had this journey. I'm grateful at the end of the day for having survived this once again. Another curved ball. I took it. And I hope, sincerely, I know, without doubt, there are thousands of others who've seen this story, seen this journey, participated, learned a lot from it, and benefited. And I'm still in touch with the Special Forces guys, 2 of them. And actually, I'm in touch with a couple of the prisoners in there who are in for life. And sad, they should have been freed long ago. They're good men and they're sitting there helpless. So all I can do is give them a bit of encouragement, a bit of love, and a bit of show him the pictures of the mountain and the beauty. Let me just quickly show you this. Show you where I am. You must see where I am. If you can. It's too bright. That's great, and that's out my door. It's beautiful here. I just wish you could see more.
Yeah, it looks peaceful.
That's a story. That's the story of being thrown into jail at 49 years old. Oh, I just had my birthday party in Basra. The British military caterers, and they don't, hulle skrik vir niks. The best food. You will not believe the cake that I had for me on my 59th birthday. And the friends, so many friends. Imagine what they felt when they heard that after my birthday party, that everybody had a beautiful braai and steaks and chops and cake and the best food that you can get out there. And the next day, or 2 days after, heard that Gareth's in jail. So it was a tricky dicky. It was a hell of an embarrassment to us all. But at the end of the day, I think many of them are watching this. They're watching the whole story unfold. and seeing the light at the end of this tunnel. It's a bright light. It was a great victory. And I hope my son shares it one day, and my wife. So,
Well, we've been speaking 2 hours now. Would you believe again?
I'm sorry.
And we always try to make it less, but we don't care. I mean, we actually love speaking to
We
you.
try to make it short.
But I don't think people are going to complain about this in all seriousness.
I
No,
hope
but,
not.
you know, it was a fantastic story. Thank you for that. And yes, we're certainly going to have you back. But right now I have to end the video. It's Friday here. As I say again, it's the 10th of June.
Smoke show.
I'm hoping to get a video out. It will not be today, but in the future when you people look here. Might already be out, I don't know.
Yeah.
About the commemoration. What do you call it in English? That word you couldn't say either.
Commemoration. What?
Yeah, well, I can't even say
Commemoration of our lost heroes. Our lost. Yeah, commemoration.
Of your last years and also of the smoke shell operation. Everything just comes together today. So thank you, Gareth, and to the rest of you. Come and tell your story to us. You know, there's somebody out there who's going to listen, who's going to learn from it, and then all that's called help wasn't for it, you know, and something good comes from your experiences. That's what I would like to see. And at the end, I know I'm saying this in all the videos now, get off your ass out of your room. You don't need to be in a cell. You're not in a damn cell. Go and join your mates. Go and join your mates at the associations, at the parades. Come back to us. Come back to the fold. You're welcome with us. And until we meet again, God bless.
Thank you. Thank you, Koos.